kind of art do you do?
I'm a potter, an original traditional potter, I guess you would call me.
All right, yeah.
Rather than this, there's always that discussion about whether one is a ceramicist or a potter, or a ceramic artist.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I was, trained back in the Anglo-Asian Bernard Leach Hamada sort of years, not quite that far back, but everyone was a potter then. And I think it's, ceramics was something quite different. Ceramics was, slip cast mould and being able to buy blanks and then sort of paint on them. But as time has gone on, and I suppose it's a bit of an Americanization of the profession, and people have become ceramicists or ceramic artists or just straight visual artists, sort of incorporated in the whole thing. But potter has a term, sort of feels like a term of endearment. It seems, sort of closer, I think. So I like to be a potter.
Ah, good. I'll remember that, potter.
An artisan thing, isn't it? The potter.
Yeah, well, see, the artisan feels remote to me. It sort of feels, the word artisan is just seems a little bit less connected, less knowledgeable. Sort of standing back several sort of paces back from someone who might not be part of the community, if you like. Yeah.
Did you see for the Triennale, the ceramics Triennale, there were the potters from India over. I don't know whether you saw that, from Rajasthan. Before, they'll always be the Rajasthani potters.
Yeah.
Never dream of calling the Rajasthani.
Well, I don't think Bernard Leach would ever call himself a ceramicist if he was alive.
No.
I think he'd definitely call himself a potter.
But I've seen the videos of him making pots in his worsted suit and tie and shirts. So English.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, is it Tony? Is it Tony who asked me that question? Robin.
Yeah, that's my husband's name. I don't know why it's come up.
So, Robin, are you an artist, a painter?
Yeah, well, I've started up watercolouring again. I want to do native birds and create a business selling online. Yeah, so I have done graphic arts in the days that you used a pencil, not a computer. So, yeah, I've always been interested, but now I'm retired. I want to concentrate on watercolour of the beautiful birds that we see out the backyard.
Lovely. Yeah. And whereabouts are you?
Port Huon.
Port Huon.
Yeah. So we look over we've been here since August, and we look over the river and the snow. It's beautiful.
Where did you come from, Robin?
Originally Melbourne, but we went up to Port Macquarie, Brisbane, Mackay. I love it here. It's cooler. So Melbourne originally.
Going to hit 18 degrees today, they tell us. That's pretty exciting.
Well, Port Huon's always 2 degrees cooler, isn't it, than Hobart?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with that area. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's sunny. It's lovely and sunny at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, good.
And Angela, hello. I haven't said hello to you.
Hi, Simon. Good morning.
Where are you?
I'm working from the office. I'm one of the few at Huonville today at the council.
So the offices are still open?
Yes. Yeah, the vast majority of staff are working from home, but just a few. Yeah, a few working from the office. The customer service centre, so the forward-facing elements are closed.
What happened to your background, Lisa?
I can't. David's working from home today.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
on the good computer, so I'm on the 20-year-old laptop where hardly anything works.
And
I'm
Lisbeth,
looking.
Lisbeth is just trying to connect.
Hi. Hello.
Lisbeth, can you hear us?
No, she's muted.
No.
Just need to up.
It says that she's connecting to audio, but that's where it seems to be hanging.
She might be not unmuted.
where are all the men?
Well, that's a thing, isn't it? That's a thing.
Yeah, my husband's working from home, so I've locked myself in the bedroom.
We do have a number of male artists and creative producers in the network. Unfortunately, not here today.
Well, they may turn up. So how big is the network altogether of people?
Well, we've got well over 100 people on the mailing list now, so it seems to be growing. But it's just, yeah, it's just a pity, I think, that more people didn't sign up today, because it would have been, I think, to hear your talk. But we'll keep on trying, and we'll keep on spreading the word to our group. So, yeah.
Well, people joining in slowly.
Yes, I was just looking at the time. I don't want to go really over time. So are people happy to get started now?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and Tasmania, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So thank you everyone for joining our first online Artists and Makers workshop. As you'll remember, this one was supposed to be held at Hagen Cider, so sorry about that, it didn't happen today, but it's still great to be able to connect online today. So I'm really happy to have Simon as our presenter. So it not only was Simon happy to present again today, but also he's hosting this through Zoom, because we don't have that at work. Simon, just to give a quick background if you are not familiar with him, he's a visual and socially engaged artist with over 30 years experience of teaching artistry. I don't think I have the time to list everything again. Simon, you'll just give a little bit of background yourself, but he's all over the world. He's set up groups, he's connecting people to arts. There's a lot of things that Simon has done that I think he has a wealth of knowledge that is really, I'm so happy that we can share that with you today. So I just wanted to thank you all for signing up for this workshop as well. I know that it is a different medium, and as we were quickly talking before, I know that people are getting a little bit zoomed out, so thank you for making the effort to be here. And so I guess lastly, I would like to say to the artists here as well, if you have any concerns or needs or ideas for the recovery for the Valley with regards to arts and plays, then please talk to us, because we really like to be able to use the arts to get people through this present time. I think creativity is something that will really help people's health and well-being to get through this. So today's topic is connecting communities through creativity, and we'll explore if art can engage us when we're not able to physically connect. We will be exploring ways to connect with art in a post-COVID-19 world as well. So Simon, I just wanted to say thank you again, and I'll just hand over to you. One little thing that will be helpful, if you're not talking, if you can mute your microphone, that will make it easier for everybody to hear everything clearly. So apart from this, welcome, and I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you. Hang on, all right, hang on, I'm back. That's good.
Oh, sorry, will you be recording this?
I was just going to say I've hit the record button, so what I can do is just, if there's any bits we don't want, we can cut it down and we'll put it up and you can distribute that. I did remember, but thank you for it.
Okay, no, thank you.
Although I've been all over the world, I do now live just outside, just overlooking Pipe Clay Lagoon over Clifton Beach, and I love it in Tassie. I've been here for 4 years, came at the beginning of 2016, so I'm very kind of settled here. I do get a bit cold, I have to admit, now and again. That's the thing I don't like, but often I go away in the winter, but not this year. I'm going to have to hunker down. So I'm going to quickly run through a few things, and I'm sorry, Robin, you saw quite a bit of this the other day. So I'm showing a few, a little keynote, some slides. I'll share my screen. And then I think it's just nice to get everybody together really and have a nice chat. So we'll do a bit of a conversation at the end. So I'm just going to open this and share my screen. And I think, is everybody seeing that?
Yep.
Great. Okay. I thought I'd start you with a quote today to get you thinking. The crucial job of artists is to find a way to release materials into the animated middle ground between subjects and to initiate the difficult but joyful process of human connection. I think that's a wonderful quote, a lovely role for what artists are here for. And I suppose you'll see I have a very particular thought about what artists do and what community engagement is. I've just made this little thing here that just going to tell you what I was going to do today. I'm going to start with a little something about me, my background and my practice. And that really overlaps a bit with the origins of community arts. I use this drawing technique a lot. This is using an iPad, a bit of software called Notability, and I've just recorded this drawing I did last week. I'm going to focus on one piece of work I made called Self-Assembly, and have a look at what the facets of that program were, and in a way what they lead to, which is the facets of community arts. And I'm sure a lot of you know a lot of this stuff, but at the end of my PhD, which I just completed 4 years, I really went quite deep on looking at these different forms of community art, whether it be community-led or artist-led, and what the overlap areas are, and what is this thing called CACD, which is Community Arts and Cultural Development. All of these things, I think the most critical thing in this way of working, arts becomes a connector within communities. It can be a music concert, it can be making a big pot together, or whatever it is, art can be a connector. And I suppose I'm going to provoke that we don't want a reset at the end of this crisis. So what are the facets of this idea of arts being a connector can we develop? So that when we come out of COVID-19 thing, if we do and when we do, how do we do it? And one of the ways I'm doing it here and trying to encourage artists to do it is with a project called Atelier, where we're trying to rethink what our processes are as artists and how and who we engage with, and trying to move out of the idea of arts being just a capital A arts, but into other things. If anybody wants to jump in at any questions, I suppose
Simon, it's Bronwyn. I'm just not getting the full screen of your presentation. I'm getting your notes.
The numbers on.
Sorry?
Are you getting getting?
I'm just getting your notes, your presenter's notes, and then the next slide.
What you're looking at.
Yeah.
Is everybody getting that?
Yes.
No, that's not what you're meant to be getting.
No, you're supposed to be having the other. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Thank you for telling me. Right.
Probably need to go back because it wasn't visible. Yeah.
Let me just change something and then we should be fine. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Right. You're all seeing, can you see me? Yes. Great. Okay. Let's share screen again. I'm sorry. That was a, let's go back.
Yay.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. Now, oh, are you getting it now? Has that gone black?
It's black now for me.
It's weird. It's swapping on the, it's swapping screens. That's what it's doing. Okay, let's just go with it like that. You can see it.
That's working. That's
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
Okay, so there's my quote. Sorry.
Yeah.
They're the things I was going to do. And there's a little bit about me. We're back on track now. So just really quickly, I trained as a printmaker back in England, back in the late 70s, 80s, 60 this year. So I've been doing this for more than 30 years now. And straight after art college, I kind of went straight into working with kids and communities. It just happened. Key thing was meeting my wife, who was a teacher. That's always very influential. I think one of the things here, I suppose, I find interesting and in my research has come up is how so many people have drifted into working on community arts. They haven't actually trained. It's a thing you kind of find yourself doing. Most recently, I moved to Tassie and set up All That We Are and finished my PhD. I got a lovely fellowship from the Australia Council a couple of years ago, which was really good. I work with the Tate in UK, and I currently chair Regional Arts Australia, which is a very nice role to have. Quickly, something about my practice. I break it up into 3 lots. We're going to look at the second one of those mostly today. As I said, I'm trained as a visual artist, been showing work, and I made this bulk of work I've made here was as a response to a loss in my life. I lost my mother 8 years ago, and I've been obsessively making self-portraits ever since, literally kind of obsessively. And it fits with all the stuff around art and mourning that you're trying to recreate yourself in some form. I'm really shortcutting this. This is another one of my images recently. The eyes on there are my father's eyes. And I was playing around, I played around for 4 years really of using elements of my family with me. And so it was a bit scary when I first dropped the eyes on my face and thought, oh my God, that's my dad. All of these images are made on iPad. Been working on iPad pretty well exclusively for about 9 years. I make a lot of books, really like sewing and hand making books. Books are really great things because they can flow into groups and communities very effectively, and people can look at them in their own time and their own way. It's not a presentation as such. Here's an old picture of me working in Ireland, and what the project was there was publishing books with children, by children, for children. So we would hand screen print editions of about 100 handmade books, and it was lovely. It was a week project, go in on a Monday, end of Friday, there'd be a pile of 100 hand printed books by kids. So using my art skills with communities in different ways. I came to Australia in 2004 and set up this place. This was an empty shell of a building just down by Federation Square in Melbourne, and it became Art Play. And Art Play is still an art centre for children and families. Very empty inside, not very much in there, except we always used to say the imagination of the artists. So we used to employ probably 250 artists a year to come in and do different sorts of programs, from painting to installations, companies, polyglot. We had grants to support artists' new ideas, new work, but the main focus was working with children. Over the years, it became working more and more with very young children, actually. Probably under 5s was about 60% of the program in the end, with parents. So that's how I that was my genre in Australia for 12 years, working with kids, and became knowledgeable about the work going on across the country. But really, one of the things it then highlighted was how so many of the artists just often were not quite making it up as they go along. That's unfair, but there wasn't a solid practice of a way of working with community, no sort of training. So we used to run a monthly gathering just of artists coming together to share their practice, talk about how they did things. And it was amazing the number of artists who said, I just never get the chance to do this, really, talk about what I do with kids in a professional way. So we were really trying to professionalize this work. And there are certain facets about this work, I suppose, I get really obsessed with. Don't get me going on it, really, because there are so many things, details about the way you run these programs that exemplify good practice in working with communities. So in my PhD, I developed this work here, which I'm just going to show you a few pictures of. I'm being brought a cup of coffee. How nice is that? That's a small one. Very nice, thank you. Let's see if this opens. So I'm going to jump off to a website, which I hope you're seeing. So this is a website just of the self-assembly work. So this work's called self-assembly. What is it? It is a very simple response to being on my land, in a way. There was so much fallen wood on my land, as we all have, that I started to use that local material and wanted to find a way to use it with communities in different ways. And what came out of these were this 7 pieces of wood that get fixed together to make a figure. It's disarmingly straightforward, really. I can make that video bigger. They're connected with plaster bandage, the kind of bandage you use. You may have used it, sometimes it's called mod rock, or you may have broken an arm and had your arm repaired with this bandage. The beautiful thing about it is it sets very quickly. This is speeded up slightly, but still you can make one of these figures in about 15-20 minutes if you do it like I'm doing it here. Now the way it's being made here is...
Sorry Simon, are you showing a video? Because I'm just seeing a screen at the moment, just still.
Are you seeing it video now?
No.
In the middle of the screen?
It's just a still image.
Oh, that's interesting. Is anyone else seeing, is this an image in the middle of the screen still or moving?
Still.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Totally weird. I'll show you the figures because you'll see how they're made.
Yeah, thank you.
It's amazing. I use Zoom all the time, but you're learning about it all the time. Okay, so the process of making these is collecting sticks off the land, sorting them, cutting them, laying them out. People select the sticks, and there are 7 pieces to collect. A head, a neck, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a body. And I've run this in various places around the world. This is in Melbourne in Art Play. This was in New York. And people take their time to select the wood.
Sorry, Simon.
It's still not working, yeah.
No, it seems to be frozen on the slide. So I don't think when you clicked on the link that anything, I don't know, I didn't see anything.
No, there hasn't been any change since the original slide.
It's okay, right, hold on.
So you might have to go on actually onto the site yourself.
Weird. Okay.
Because it's not set up as a link, active link.
Ah, there we are. Yeah.
Okay, you're there now. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's just start that process again. So this piece called self-assembly, you can see that now.
Yep.
Great. Now you can see the video running in the middle of the screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. We're back. Apologies. So 7 pieces of wood, and they're attached with this plaster. Now I can make this bigger, and you should be able to see it big. Yes?
Yes.
Great. And this is a real speeded up version, but you can see it's made with this plaster bandage. And the pieces are attached together. Now, you know, the process is straightforward, but it's designed so that it happens quickly. The pieces are made quickly. You have very little choice. Really, you get your 2 pieces of wood and you fit them together. Usually you have to do this with somebody else. I'm doing it myself here because I've done it so many times, but it's a piece of work that happens as a collaborative making activity. And there's a point of balance that you'll see in a minute you get to. So that one of the facets about this is using materials from the land. So I've used material from England, from beech and oak, and here they tend to be gum, and I think the figures look very different accordingly. They're attached together in a way that kind of you make it, they end up very, well, Miranda's done this, they end up very lumpy and they end up very different, and that is their beauty, that they all look quite different to one another. I'll leave that running and I'll come back to that. These are what the things look like. Here are some images. So here are the pieces on the floor, people collecting them. That's in Ireland, Melbourne. Taking their time to choose the pieces or let the pieces choose them. And then they make them together. And the making process normally takes about an hour or so, and they are getting wet, messy. The plaster heats as it sets. If you've used this stuff, you'll know it. I think that image is wonderful of 4 hands coming together over art to make something. Beautifully messy process, but not too messy. This is down on Bruny Island, making them outdoors. This is with some Aboriginal artists here at the house. Very different designed figures there. And there's the process of 2 figures are nearly made, and then you have to work with your partners. So Sissy and Lin then were working together to make sure the 2 figures would balance. They could be connected with 2 hands. Or 3 figures connected together. People would make families. And then you join them together in some way. So either the pairs would go together, this was in the studio of kind of dancing pairs, or they could all be joined as one group. And usually people would get in the positions then of figures that they put on the ground. And we always ask the people to make a representation of themselves. And here they've actually got labels on because these then went to go to an exhibition somewhere and people came and took them out of the show. So whizzing through the photographs, that was outdoors down on Bruny. Family group. And these are some of the drawings I make about the work. I mean, I constantly am drawing, but so the connection in the middle implies that they're a continuing work. It's not completed. The faces are the wood turned on its side, which is around kind of the age of a person is shown. The plaster remains unsealed and raw. I've tried covering it with varnish, but it doesn't work. It doesn't have the right feel. The shape of the limbs, the tree, determine the nuance of the figures. So there's a whole range of things here that is, again, I'm saying representative of, for me, an artist-led community artwork. So here's a gathering of the figures. It's about the relationship that happens between them, the transformation of the wood into a community. And I do a lot of talking around and thinking around what these are, and that's what I did in my PhD. That was something I sent out to potential staff at the Tate. I needed staff to help me, so it was a quick way to tell them what the brief was for the session. So there are images. There are 4 stages of that. There's selecting the parts you make yourself, you connect to another to stand. These figures can't stand on their own, they require another figure. And then you join it and belong to a community. I did a session last year at Tate Modern, and there are just some nice photographs from that. That was mid-morning. Lots of people came. Although this started off as a kids' activity, a lot of adults just loved doing it. So for me, this one was tricky because how much do you stick with exactly what you want the figures to look with, and how much do you let the participants determine what they look like? So here, you can just see where I'm maybe using my mouse in the middle. One of the figures has got feet on it. Well, I didn't really want feet on them. I didn't like them, but you know, you've got to go with it. You've got to go with the participants, but there's a balance of holding on to the integrity of the work while letting the people do what they want to do. So it was a lovely setting for it. It was a lot of wood to prepare. I did have to go out and clean and spray 1,500 pieces of wood for the afternoon. It was a nice outing for the work. And really, I always call this a relational work because it's not really about the figures at all. It's really about the making and the conversation and all of that stuff that goes around them. But for me, somehow, this beautiful wood is the catalyst for it happening. So that was an outing, and I'm just actually putting in a proposal to do this for Sydney Festival next year, and potentially 10 days. And these are just some of the drawings I'm putting together. That the idea of using blackened, burnt wood from bushfire zones is of interest. And the whole scale of the things might change with these new plans. I'll just whiz through these. Some drawings of proposals of how they might look. And obviously this is a piece which requires gatherings of people to come together to make these and physically be together. So my challenge is how I can perhaps design a process where we can end up with an installation of figures. And for the festival, we're talking about thousands of figures, but people can contribute to it, either working online, or they send a figure in, or we do it somehow in a different way to a big group coming together. That's a challenge. So there's a few drawings of how I'm thinking they might look. That's just my process I'm sharing with you there, really. These are all made on iPad. Drawing is a constant thing I do. Now I'm just going to whiz back. Hold on a minute. Stay with me. I'm going back to here. I see now how it works. Right, you're back here now. So that's that work. I talked about my different sorts of practice. I think all of us as practitioners have different elements of our work. And for my PhD and my recent work, I was thinking about my work being in 3 areas: a personal practice, public participatory practice, that's what I count that work as, where people contribute to a greater whole, a piece of something. Everybody's piece is different. It's about celebrating all those bumps and lumps of the plaster and the wood. You cannot make a wrong figure. Everybody can contribute. And then there's a social practice too, which is this house, which some of you have been to, which we basically run as an artwork that people come to and connect through creativity. So all of these elements are around, for me, connecting with my community and connecting with myself through creativity. I might skip that one. So going on to this, sorry, Robin, you saw this the other day too, but this is what people in the Australia Council for the Arts consider is community arts and cultural development. It's where there are collaborations between professional artists and communities based on a community desire to achieve artistic and social outcomes. So it's very much not just about artistic outcomes, but valuing the social outcomes too. So it's a kind of provocation of where we're going to go next and what we do after this. The most recent stuff we've done is thinking about what is this new practice? Well, there are some certain words that come through for me, which are important about the way we work with our communities. Emergence. It's a bit of a modern, not modern, a contemporary word in the research area, emergent. For me, it basically just means I don't know what I'm going. I know how I'm going to get there, but I don't know where I'm going. Co-creative, working with communities to share the making process. Reflective is very important. For me, generosity is incredibly important in making art. Contributory, well, people want to contribute to things together or share. Mindful. Resistance, an interesting one. I don't know quite what I meant when I put that down. Listening and decolonized, which interesting, working with some Aboriginal artists, they hate that word. That's a very white version of a direction, I suppose. So for me, what this community art stuff is around is supporting artists with and I absolutely believe everybody is an artist. Everybody has the capacity to be creative. Not everybody is a professional artist. Everybody has in them the capacity to be creative and be contribute both, be creative in connecting to themselves and their communities. So I think our job as artists is to support individuals to have agency to be creative. Now, in the lockdown, it is so interesting to see how many people are making bread and how many people are sewing and all of those things. But traditionally, there are a lot of people who'd say, oh, no, I'm not at all creative. No, I can't draw. No, definitely. I couldn't make a figure like that. And at the beginning of that thing I show you, those figures, self-assembly, so many people say, oh, no, I can't do that. And there's this fear of, no, definitely. By the end, they've all made one. They're very happy and they've contributed to a whole. So I use that piece as an example of how you can design something which enables people to contribute to a shared whole where the process of the making builds relationships, it builds social cohesion, it's great for community health, as we know, it's great for mental health. All of those things can come out of that work. And for me, although the final installation of figures can be beautiful, it is not the objective of the work. It is one objective of the work. So I started to think, one of the things I was challenged with was by my supervisor. So what's your manifesto then? A manifesto? Well, I quite like that idea of having a manifesto, and it may be more relevant than ever, a post-COVID-19 manifesto. What are we going to do as artists? How are we going to change anything? So I started to sort of make some drawings around what a manifesto might look like. I haven't looked at this for a while, but the idea of the gift, there's a generosity here of artists. And this is one of the images of just I've used of me. There's my father's eye again on my face, listening. But within the box there's now the time for a general practice manifesto. So for me, the most important thing to do in our community is to generate and foster and support people to be makers. Not a watcher or a listener, but a maker and a doer. I think our communities would be so much richer if everyone conceived of themselves as making and doing, and not that idea of saying, oh, no, I couldn't possibly. And that making can be very broad. It can be sewing, it can be cooking, it can be dancing, singing, and community choirs is a fabulous example of where people have contributed to be makers. These get a bit esoteric a bit, but the second one is open our hearts. I think we need to be very, as artists, we need to foster a generosity that we have, a lack of competitiveness within our communities, and a sheer valuing of following our hearts rather than our minds. The third one is, I fully believe in collaboration and co-creation, and artists' role. I really think an artist's role is to work with communities to make stuff together. You can have a bit of your practice where you go off and do your own thing. Of course, I do that. All individuals well, but I think a key role of skilled artists is to foster that making process as a collaborative process. The fourth one I've got in there at the bottom there is take responsibility for change. I think artists are often step outside of communities and step into their studios. And actually, I think it's time for the community to be the studio post-19. So that's my kind of beginnings of a manifesto. Making is top of the list. Be a maker-doer, not just a watcher or a listener. Use your hands and eyes and feelings. Foster the idea of love. And love may sound an odd word, but I've worked with the Tate in London. And Tate Modern spent 2 years reforming their education program. And at the end of that education program, reform and rewrite, I spoke to the person who runs the team there, and she said, you won't believe it, she said, but really, after 2 years of whiteboards after whiteboards, what do we do here? Why are we doing it? The most important word that came through was love. It's an extraordinary idea that an institution like that can do that, but for them, the word love was totally undervalued and underestimated. And we talk it down in our society because economies, on the whole, don't have a currency for it. And that seems to be a problem. So I'm a bit of a romantic, capital R, as well, that we need to surround ourselves and notice the beauty. And see, I refer to Morris and Ruskin and Goethe and Ingold and people like that. I'm really a reader of, and acknowledge the creativity in others. Open the heart, and for me, some things matter very much, and really caring about those things. So it's another kind of wild drawing here, but you know, what happens after? How to survive the train wreck. And this was done last year, long before, this was more about climate change. What do we have to do? Well, it's about values for me, and skills. A lot about managing loss. I think that's going to be increasingly important. I think artists and making is a fantastic way of managing loss and mourning. And I think it's another role for us to foster that within communities. And nourishing our local people. I'm a big fan of Joseph Beuys. He's my man. He said, art today cannot be called art if it does not reach into the heart of our nature and initiate transformation. That's to say, art which is unable to shape society and cannot reach the core questions of our society or deal with the question of capital is not art. It's provocative. It was written back in the 70s, but I think that's a really interesting revisit to have at this point. In terms of how we connect post, I'll finish with just saying how a little bit about the project we run, the Atelier project. One of the things we're running in a couple of weeks' time is around running online programs. And this is something I'm doing with, there's 4 of us. There's the Opera House, Art Gallery WA, art play in the city of Melbourne and maybe together in Perth. And we're contributing to one of these sessions. So these are about how do you actually engage with communities using an online mode rather than really being there, and whether we even should do that. So the first one's in that pink square, beyond tasks, building collaboration. Second one's responding slowly and trusting process. Engaging in inclusivity online, creative leadership in online stuff. And the last one is about creating relational theatre in homes. So there are 4 sessions coming up. They start on the 21st of May, and they're part of this thing called Atelier, which I'll just finish and show you that site, just so you see it. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to just share again. There we go. Atelier is Tasmania.org, and this is a project that's been running 3 years, which we run out of the office here, essentially. It's about building this ecology of socially engaged artists. And I think this year, for the next iteration of this, we're going to think about expanding this so it's not only people who consider themselves artists, it's others who work in communities. So we have a whole bunch of artists. It's about 46, I think now, 47 across Tasmania, all Tasmanian. Doesn't want to load. Let's see if, yeah, there it goes. So we've got about 46 artists, and what the program is a paid professional development program. So here are some of the artists from across the state, and all of them work with intergenerational groups at some point in some way. And really, there's no gatekeeper here. If you work with people like that, you can join this group. And what do you get from it? Well, the group is basically what it is it's a paid learning exchange program. Atelier is Artists in Tasmania's Ecology for Learning, Intergenerational Exchange and Reflection. It essentially brings artists together on a monthly basis. In fact, we're doing them more often now if we look at our calendar, for paid learning exchanges. So you can come along face-to-face if and when they start again. You get paid $250 for the day stipend to come and attend, so we actually pay for your learning. You meet other artists. Let's have a look at one we've done in the past just to show you the kind of thing we did. This one, this is called Capturing Process, about documenting your work. So we have a provocation. So we had this woman, Alex from Perth, does an online provocation for us for about half an hour, then we have conversations with other artists, and it runs through till about 4:30. We've recently moved to being online things, so these tend to be half-day events. We've got one coming up next week on Monday called Art and Mourning, Developing Your Creative Practice to Manage Loss and Uncertainty. And Esther Dreyfus-Catan, who wrote this great book called Art and Mourning, is going to be zooming in from California for a quick half an hour provocation, opening the booking for that tomorrow. We'll run a few other projects around the place, working with different groups. START is a big one, working with Salamanca Arts Centre, running programs. We're just doing a book of children's voices in the COVID era. And the one that we're developing as well, just trying to work out how we work online with programming. So Cherie Martin here has been running some sessions where she is in her studio on Zoom and all the kids are in their spaces on their iPads. It's an interesting experience. Here are some of the pictures from it. So she actually sent out to all the kids beforehand a little box they could open up and turn into their own studio. So she sent them all a kit, a bucket, and various art materials and a box. So they all had one. I think it's a gorgeous idea that they actually had something that she had. And she had her little red art shed in her studio backyard, and then she zoomed her activity from there. And a couple of us as adults, Beck and me, watched the program and did a kind of assessment of it. It was very interesting. So she's done about 4 or 5 of these now. And we're exploring that area of how to do it. So I think there's 2 things I'll finish with and say that, stop share. I think there's 2 things here to provoke. One is how and if we want to actually do the work that we do online. And the second one is how we as artists can change the world after COVID-19. I think there's a role. I really, as you may have gathered, I really strongly believe there is an important role for artists to play in our communities, in not just an artistic way, but in a multifaceted way, that we can lead a lot of the communities out of some of the problems that we have been in before. And there is your provocation for the day. How do we do that? And should we do that? Or should we retire to studios and never go and see anybody ever again? I think I'll leave it there for a discussion to ensue.
Thank you, Simon. That was really interesting. I hope other people liked it too. So,
yeah. Questions, happy to, or, you know, whatever.
Just in one of your imagery coming through on your words, you put the word, you said, oh, resistant. I wonder why I put that word resistant in that sort of list of sort of notions. But perhaps you were, because you picked it up later, perhaps you were thinking of resilience.
Yeah, true.
Maybe the word resistant came out because you later referenced resilience as the...
Those drawings, I literally made, I mean, I make them every day, a couple a day probably. So they're very much, they're not drawings, they are thinking drawings. I call them gather flow drawings. They gather, get my ideas flowing as I go along. So they're not often something that everything on there is completely right. They're just, you know, well, I think there is some resistance though.
Mm-hmm.
I think we do need to do some resistance, don't we? I don't know. Do we want the world to go back the way it was?
No.
And is there a role, therefore, for creativity to help us move out of it? That's my provocation.
Well, yeah. And you talked about, you know, the economies don't recognise love as a currency.
Yeah.
They don't also sufficiently recognise creativity as currency either. They're beginning to think of it now, but it's really having to be pushed upon them. And each one of us who's really active in that field has a lot of time each day spent trying to get that message across in our own, you know, social media ways, I guess, because that's our voice at the moment. But certainly this notion of economy and currency and creativity, those, you know, it's more and more, particularly in our region here, and becoming more and more top of mind, I think, and can be easy.
How do you mean in your region now?
Oh, in the Huon. The Huon is...
In what way, though? Do you mean that's you?
Well, it's being, becoming, well, there is opportunity. It feels as though there's an attempt to do it, but whether a delivery of it is going to happen, it's happening slowly, and I think maybe post-COVID it might happen more strongly. But I think it feels that it's being left to groups and individuals to do it, whereas it is an area where there is a lot of assistance needed in getting as you say, the whole community across involved, engaged.
The question I have, and it's interesting, now as chair of Regional Arts Australia, and you may have heard we just got a $10 million boost through the government for regional arts. So sometime after probably July, there will be a considerable boost coming through Regional Arts Tasmania or projects, which sadly I'm not able to apply for from anyway.
But we are.
But you are. But my provocation, though, Bronwyn, is the conversations always seem to come back to money. And that seems to me the problem, that if we have to shift, we have to change the currency from being money, not to give a currency of money to love, but to actually use love, community, and those things. They're the currency, you know?
Unfortunately, you know, in order to set these things up, these opportunities up, the use of, even though you can use an open venue or a field that doesn't cost money, but there are aspects of it that do require money, and part of that, probably less so now because individuals and groups can do it themselves, but part of that is promotion and you know, the cost of the time involved by those individuals who wish to you know, provide, to give that opportunity to sit down and work out how to do it, and develop these sort of projects as you are doing. It costs time. It costs time away from your own studio work to do that. And certainly regional arts has the ability to actually monitor, or, you know, pay for that time.
Well,
however, just to finish, sorry. However, because it's obviously a passionate thing for me, this particular topic. You can be altruistic, and you know, altruism hours are almost spent in my world, you know, in my personal world. But I've still got a lot of activity, you know, and preparedness to do things. However, you know, there comes a time when you sit down and, as you know, with your drawings, etc., and your thinking and your development of applications and all that sort of thing, it's time consuming. And to collate that information that's required to be successful in an application takes time and a lot of knowledge and skill. And there are some people, fortunately, that can do that, and others that can't. And so almost like a skills audit within a region or within a genre or whatever, there's value in sort of identifying those people who have the ability to do that. And instead of it being an artistic, you know, the grants allow artists to be paid to be engaged, but they also, what if some of those artists actually have entrepreneurial or other skills as well? How does that show through to be a successful applicant? I'll stop.
Can I say something? I guess where I'm getting a bit confused when you're mentioning that, Bronwyn, is that I guess it's about, for me, I suppose I would be, and I guess I'm a little bit fuzzy and romantic, I'd be looking at the outcome. Like for me, if you say the word do something for the community or do something out of love and create something together, for me, more value than the money is actually the feeling of connection, I guess, you know, like the photos, for example, that Simon was showing of, I guess what I saw in the photos with the stick figures is people's faces and their smiles and the recognition of doing something beautiful, and how that could possibly create something really beneficial that is kind of intangible. You know, even though I hear your point, because you are a professional and you need to live and be able to pay for your shopping and things like that as well. But I wonder if there is a space for that warm, fuzzy side as well. And
absolutely. But I feel that so often, and I've been in this situation where I actually have my professional work is to be able to do that sort of thing, and I was paid to think and paid to do and prepare that circumstance that would allow you or everyone else to have the warm and fuzzy feeling. But it's so often, for instance, in your cultural development role in council at the moment, and the same with Angela, it's a paid position to create that circumstance. So you can have a series of committees and talks and things like that will bring together the notion of an event or a project and engage Simon to, present that, if you like, and get it going. But Simon has originally thought about all these ways to do it, and he's had, because his life is surrounded by this, and to a degree is also a recipient of some money to think about, have time thinking and develop all of this. You know, somewhere along the line, it takes time, and you can't rely on voluntary work. You can't rely on volunteers to do it.
Yeah, and so sorry, can I jump in quickly? So one of the things that has been happening, as you probably will have remembered from the Arts and Culture Committee of last year, that we were talking about grants for artists in the community. Some of this has changed now because of COVID, and there's now quick response grants coming out, and Angela can probably knows a little bit more about it than me at this stage. But a large proportion of that money is allocated to the arts and creativity. But the aim of this is to help the community rebuild and reconnect. So I think to that extent, we are trying to for that financial side of it. But I think to some extent there is also, it would be nice to have an element of cooperation and
Yes.
goodwill, if that is there.
Can I ask you, Miranda? So,
Yeah.
because the key thing, I think, Bronwyn, I'm totally with you. I get it, but I think
It's the admin. It's the preparation.
But what we have to change is the reporting back and the criteria by which grants are given. That's where we've got to move up to. So the question I have for Miranda is, if you're giving out these grants, how do you measure how do you measure the impact of whether they're worth giving to those communities or not? Because I think my problem is, if we continue to use the old measures, then it's not going to work. We have to actually shift the measures. And I think you'd be surprised that if you put an application or talk to the Australia Council, for example, as an organisation, about not coming up with numbers of people who have turned up, numbers of this, and actually tried to change the way, I think they will be more receptive than you would think. And I think people are still locked into this idea of, I have to report back on my grant and say 28 people came, and no, perhaps it was 40.
Use the vision, show what's happening. That's the numeric that's required, and it has been for a long time.
Well, I think we need to remove the numeric.
Yeah, the numeric is different. You know, there's so many different ways to report back now.
So,
sorry, can I jump in for a second? So, Ange, have you got some feedback on that?
Yeah, I suppose going back a step, I wholeheartedly believe there is a place for artists and creative people in our future now and going forward with the COVID-19 response. Whatever it looks like, it's going to have to be something different, something new. And I think creative people are able to think outside the box, and I think we need them to do that and be resistant, be provocative, challenge assumptions, particularly when we start getting comfortable again. So I just wanted to really say that I'm a strong believer in that, and I really appreciate people getting together today and talking about how the arts and creativity can help through that. One of my other roles at council is looking at recovery and that's probably just a term which doesn't mean much to you. It's just an official term, but it really is about building community and building connections in community so that they are more resilient, more flexible, and adapt to whatever is thrown at them. And COVID-19 is just one example. So I'm a strong believer in the arts and creativity, in helping and communicating and connecting communities always, and especially so now. So one of the strategies that we've got from council is redirecting some of our grants programs towards recovery programs, and the grant program just got released today, so we'll be sending links to that to everybody here and to the wider artists creative network. They're just small grants, they're up to $1,000. We have tried to make the application forms as simple as possible, and the guidelines and criteria as open as possible, so that community individuals and groups, agencies can just dream about how they can work or connect community. The reporting or the criteria that they're going to be assessed on is primarily how do they benefit the community in this new environment that we have. There is no numbers there, but have a look at them. These are just a small amount. I think there's $10,000 allocated to creative projects. So that's 10 $1,000 grants, and another 15 for community projects and 5 for youth-focused projects. They're just a taster and a way that we can support the community to have the time, like you're saying, Bronwyn, and everybody else here I know is really committed to just having the time to create and think and connect with others and network.
Thank you. That's great news. I just have to apologise now because I have to leave, but I've really appreciated the opportunity, Simon and Miranda and everyone else. I know I've been chatty, but it's a topic very close to my heart. So have fun.
Yeah,
Sorry, I have to go. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Bron.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I guess a question for you then, Simon. Like if you're looking at you know, how does this benefit the community? What is a way of measuring that? Is it a way? Are we looking at health outcomes then, or what?
I think one of the things we're doing with Regional Arts Australia is getting, I'm really shortcutting the language here, but we're kind of getting rid of the capital A in the arts in a way. I think we're really trying to see that the arts portfolio moving into, say, for example, regional development is an incredibly positive thing for us, because we think at the moment the value of the arts can be measured far more easily in other areas such as health and well-being and mental health, all of those other factors that Angela, you'd be much more across than I am around measurement of well-being. I think the more was that a successful arts project? That's not really the question for me, really. It was, how was that a successful arts project for people? You know, whether it was a fantastic show or a great installation or whatever. I'm not saying that, that we're never going to have great paintings again by people. That's fine. But right now, I think for the next few years, this is the time. This is the time for community artists to engage with communities, to change those ways of measuring in the arts money. So we need to go back to the Australian Council and say, we're going to stop measuring this by audiences, stop measuring it by art values, and we're going to start measuring it with some other values that are used around well-being of communities. That, I don't know what they are actually, Miranda. I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah, okay.
Conversation with Angela, and I've become a bit more of an expert at the end of it. But it's moving the criteria away for applications for money, from being around making a great piece of art to really being, well, who's this for? What do they want? Do they want it? Do they really want this huge ballet? Who asked them? Do we really want to spend more money on this ballet than we do on the whole of community arts in Australia, which is what happened? Did anybody actually ask the community if they want this? That's, for me, that's where I want to go. I don't know whether that answers the question. Are there any other comments from people?
Yeah.
I don't know if it, I'm not an admin person, so I'm not sure how the Arts Council measure what is a good project, but I like the idea, and this is a bit romantic, of gross national happiness in Bhutan. And I know it has mixed success, but valuing sustainability and equitable socio-economic development, that there are 4 pillars, that's one. And then environmental conservation, if only we valued that as a pillar, and preservation and promotion of culture and good governance. And it just seems like a nice idea. I don't know how practical it is and how measurable all of those things are, but it just seems a better value system than what we do in our economy.
Robin, are they yours, or are they the 4 pillars?
They are the 4 pillars.
John's 4 pillars.
In Bhutan for gross national happiness. Nice idea.
You see what we've got, what I'm seeing now on the news is governments desperately trying to get the GDP up again and all of that stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there. Everyone's doing this. I mean, so as I say, I think, I think we would be surprised that the Australia Council are probably very open to these ways of thinking. And I'm sure Regional Arts Network would be not requiring such, what's the word I'm looking for? Such rigid, perhaps, or such traditional values or success criteria for grants. I think if you had an application came in, Robin, it was talking about the happiness factor, I think people would love it. I think it's what we look. It's what people look. The people who are on the panels at OSCO are people like us. They're artists, and they actually love seeing you come in. I've sat on panels up there, and you see stuff. And you think, this is brilliant. I love the way they're thinking here. Why don't we just give this a punt? You know, try it out, see. So I think it's kind of up to us to get in there and make those applications, and force Miranda and Angela to rethink the way they think about budgets. Let's force Arts Tasmania to rethink the way they give out their funds. I think it's a real role for us now to say that old way was not working. It wasn't sustainable. We were too fragile a community. Look at us, we've fallen apart. Lots of pieces of art, this is my opinion, lots of pieces of art were made that nobody gives a damn about. Frankly, I think, and I could point to some major organizations in Tasmania, a big contemporary gallery, that for me does a lot of stuff that doesn't do anything for the community at all. And actually, if we just put more trust, and trust is a big one, into those communities to do what they think, let's review it after 5 years or 10 years and see if it's working. Might not, it might, but it's worth a go because it hasn't worked to where we are. We're not a robust community that is a sector that is supporting the communities well enough. Look at us, we're all worried about our money coming in tomorrow. We're all on JobKeeper, I'm on JobKeeper, we're all on something probably to try and that's bizarre and crazy, I think, I get off my box. So what can we do as a group, I suppose, is the question. What can Huon do? Well, it can be, it could, have a group which get together and you're clearly supported by council to be a group which considers how those grants could be distributed. Tell the council how the grants should be distributed. Don't wait for somebody there to start, saying, well, we're going to have this initiative and then have that one.
I would love that, to be honest. I would really love it. Sorry, Ange. Maybe I'm stepping out of line, but I think one of the frustrations for me has been that, when you say, let's try this or let's try that, a lot of times you get no feedback at all. So I feel quite often I'm completely stabbing in the dark with what people want. I guess one of the things is the Heartfelt project that in my mind was something really fabulous, like get everyone to be creative at home, and at the end we get together and we can put everyone's art together, so it is a community thing. And when people can meet again, we can talk about it and reconnect and have something that is tactile, visual, audio. And yet again, the uptake is kind of you know, and then I just think, did we do it, you know, like, do we do it wrong? You know, but what do people want? When you ask, you get no feedback either. And that's what I find really, really what I struggle with, that I'd love to know people want to work with that. But if you don't get anything, and then whatever you throw out is kind of like, no, that's not what we want, but what do you want? And you get nothing back. I find that very hard to bridge that, or to connect with that. So, you know, and I would love to know what other people in this group think, you know, because I guess I'm a member of the community, and very ironically, Robin and I connected, and I think, you know, I'm really excited about what we're planning to do. But, you know, what do other people think? What do you hear where you live? You know, what do you hear in your groups?
Well, I'll just say something. I've been sitting here quiet, listening to everyone. Thank you. Just joined the community in August last year. There's the Castle Forbes Bay Recreation Club, which took over the cricket club. All the club is about is getting the community together. So we had an art exhibition in January. The lady in charge, she's left, so I'm going to be organising the art exhibition next January. So I'm excited. I've never done anything like this, and the whole thing is not about earning money. It's about showing the community what we can do all together. So that's one way through the arts. So yeah, I'm excited.
Like, you should be applying for one of those grants to support.
Yes. I was just going to say, like this is, you know, like, if there is anything in that case that we can help you with, then by all means, please, you know, you have my email, so just talk with us.
Would you think about making an application for that or not?
What, me?
Yeah.
Well, I thought, oh yeah, well, that's what we need. We need, you know, $1,000. We probably don't need any more, but last year people donated even just a few drinks, a few bottles, you know, food. Well, if we've got a grant, we probably can make it look a bit nicer.
I tell you, there's nothing like free drink and food to get off.
That's right. But we also had not just art, but someone reading poetry, playing music, you know, and art as a whole field, you know.
My response to that is, I think if you were actually asking artists to read or play music or something, that's what the grant's for, to pay them. Because I think if we don't actually pay our artists like us, we can't. I go back. I think I agree with who was it? Bronwyn, wasn't it? You know, you can't give everything. So you've got to be able to pay those freelance musicians or poets or whatever. But here is an ideal opportunity where the council can support that to happen. I think, you know, brilliant. Go for it. I'm sure the application has been made so easy that you can do it in an hour or something.
Yeah, I'll do that. So when I first introduced myself, I said, you know, I wanted to do art, paintings, and sell it. But I also want to be part of the community. And what everyone's been saying, it sounds great to me. Yep.
For me, I think that's such a lovely example, because so many artists, I think, well, we do our real painting and stuff in the community. Whereas I think what I was trying to say in that first presentation was doing that stuff in the community is part of your creative practice. And you undertake that work with the same kind of creativity you do when you make the paintings of the birds. It's the same way of thinking, and it's brilliant to bring that kind of energy of painting into working with communities. You curate the night, you're going to get a poet and a musician. You're a curator suddenly, you know. Yeah. Don't undervalue that community activity. Really, you know, hold that up. It's like, that's what we can all be doing more of.
And we also want to use the club room for anything, any little groups. So I would like to see a group of artists come together for a few hours. But I really like your idea, Simon, of everyone creating a piece of work and then joining it all together as a, you know, as a whole. I think that's great.
It could be that piece will happen for 10 days next year. So it may be that we can get a group from the Huon community.
Yeah.
It may be that it's something that connects over the state. So it could be a load of people from Huon connect to the 10 days one. We could look at that, sure.
Yeah.
What about other people? Sherry?
Me? Well, I studied fine art in my youth. Then I went on to study psychology. So I'm actually quite interested in art therapy. At the moment, I'm a disability support worker. I've only just started. But yeah, I've just been mulling it over, I guess, how to, you know, that's what I would like to do in the future, is to do some kind of art therapy. And I think art in the community it would be like a therapy, wouldn't it? Especially with what we're all going through.
It's totally a therapy.
Yeah. But, yeah, how to do that, how to connect with people, you know. I mean, I really liked that idea, the heartfelt idea. I've submitted a couple of things to that. You know, I jumped at the chance. You know, it made me feel better to be able to express, you know, how this situation makes me feel, you know. I'm not sure how to connect with people more broadly. That's the challenge. I think people aren't used to showing other people how they're feeling, you know, demonstrating it.
It's funny because I thought that's what art was for.
Yeah, that's right. The people are they try and keep it secret. There is this stigma about showing how you feel. It's like people see it as a weakness almost, or showing that they're not bulletproof, or, you know, but I actually think it's a strength to be able to do that, you know, to make yourself vulnerable. And I don't know. But I definitely.
Are you making any art, kind of what you might call your personal work? Are you trained as an artist? Are you painting or drawing?
Yeah, I trained in painting, but actually, yeah, I kind of love ceramics. I love sculpture. I love photography. When I graduated from art, I ended up moving to the UK and running a food business with my husband over there, and had 3 children. There was no time for me. So I ended up doing photography. It's something I could do with the children, that, you know, is out on a walk, anything like that. So I still do a lot of photography. And I guess I try and show my community and my friends what I photograph, trying to draw people's attention to, you know, the beauty that is around us, that a lot of people overlook, rather than all the negative things that are out there on social media. I try and like, I'm part of a group that does mindfulness as well, so I'm all about living in the moment and seeing what's there. Hang on one moment, my cat is meowing at the door and she's driving me crazy.
I love the way pets have joined in all these conversations.
Well, the other day I had my mindfulness group, and we're doing it via Zoom now. We're not meeting up. And she meowed at the door, and I got up and let her in, and she dropped a half live, half dead mouse on the floor.
I think you'd be interested in the Atelier program, I think. And we've got a couple of people who are art therapists on there, and we haven't done a session yet about art therapy, because in the art world, you know, therapy is a bit of a dirty word, really. People don't like it.
I know, people just sort of look at me and go, oh, what's that? You know, it sounds a bit airy-fairy. And
this is what we need now, isn't it? Healing, and, you know, that's what we're after. So now's your time.
I mean, my original inspiration was back then when I was studying art. I was very, very quiet. I didn't communicate how I felt much to people. Always smiling, always friendly. but a lot going on inside that I never expressed. But one day we had this an assignment. We had to do a self-portrait, and it wasn't allowed to be just a figurative self-portrait of you. It had to be something about you. And I mean, before that, I was very romantic and painting paintings of Titania asleep in the flowers. You know, I was a teenager, 19-year-old, very romantic. And anyway, I did these quick watercolor sketches at home, and what came out was this powerful raw image. And I ended up doing this enormous painting, like as high as a door and twice as wide across, of this figure just strapped in a chair, straining to get out, and was screaming with Jackson Pollock style splashes of paint, and you know, it looked quite violent. And when I did that at uni, everyone just went quiet and was stunned, and they said, "What is that?" You know. I said, "That's how I feel on the inside." That's what came out when I did these quick sketches. I guess I said, I feel so like when talking to people, I feel like I'm screaming on the inside and I want to get away, or, you know, that there's something going on inside that I can't escape from or express. And they were just stunned. And I remember my lecturer at the time, just like, "I just love it." He said, "If you can keep that up, you're going places," you know. It's like, but, and people just sort of didn't know what to make of it. But what the interesting thing is that I changed after that. It changed me. You know, it got something out into the broad light of day that I'd never got out. And I was a lot more outgoing after that. You know, I was a lot less, how do I put it? Something that was contained wasn't quite as contained as before. You know, and it's always stuck with me. And not, you know, I haven't painted much since, you know, to do with family and things, but it's always stuck with me what a transformation it can be, just one piece of art, you know, that maybe would take years of therapy, you know, but in just one week, just to get something out like that you didn't realize you were feeling, or, you know, something tangible, or you didn't have words for before. So yeah, it's something I'd like to do in the future. And, you know, I studied psychology the last 4 years, and, you know, talking therapy isn't always the answer. You know, I think when we start making something with our hands, or drawing, or building something with clay, things come out that we don't realize are there. Things that you can't bring out by asking questions. You know. Anyway, I'm talking a lot.
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's great. And I absolutely agree that art can show a lot more than words, written words, or saying words. So yeah, I agree.
And I would like to say as well, the work that Sherry has put forward for the Heartfelt Project, you can see this on Instagram if you look for Huon Beings. But she did an amazing image. Like the first photograph was one of her mother inside, being, you know, I guess at a vulnerable age, being inside a house. And Sherry's work was really innovative, just with this big heart on the window and his hand, you know, against the glass, because I guess, you know, we cannot touch at the moment. And then the second one was a lino cutting. So I think, you know, it's really wonderful to be able to express yourself and, you know, be confident to express yourself like that as well to the community. So yeah, so I think it's great. Probably need to get more people to be comfortable doing that. And I think, yeah, like Sherry said as well, it's how to get to people, how to get through to people, or how to reassure people that it's okay to do it. That's the challenge, maybe.
I mean, even doing that photo with my mum, because was great for her. You know, because I live alone and she lives alone. I mean, I have my children every second week, so it's kind of I do see people, but you know, we used to share a meal together, or you know, at least give each other a hug, and we haven't been able to do that for so long. And you realise how important it is to you when you can't do that anymore. You know, so doing that photo with her was really lovely. You know, I said I had this idea, and that my actual idea was that she would steam the glass up from the inside with steam and then rub away the heart and put her hand against the glass. And I didn't have a third person with me, but I wanted someone to touch her hand as well from the outside, you know, but I couldn't manage it with just how I was doing it. It turned out the steam didn't work. So we had a bit of a laugh and a joke about trying to do all that. And then I said, I know, we'll use Mr. Sheen. And you cut out a stencil heart, put it against the glass and spray Mr. Sheen around. And that worked perfectly. And, you know, she put her hand up against the glass, and I think I held a flower up to her. It was like I was wanting to give her a gift, but, you know, there was this barrier in between us. Yeah, I think she got a lot from it as well, you know. It was a connection for her. No.
So what do other artists think when they hear this? Who hasn't said anything yet? Lisa and Lisbeth.
Well, the ceramics, during the bushfires, one of the ceramic artists put together an Instagram page for ceramic potters or artists to donate pieces and sell them, and then donate the money to one of our bushfire funds that they listed that we could list it to. And during that phase of, unfortunately, it wasn't the Huon bushfires, it was the mainland bushfires. But we raised over $45,000 to donate to artists who lost their studios in the bushfires this year. So when the pandemic happened, the same artist that started this page decided that all of us ceramic artists, potters, had donated to help people who lost their studios, that maybe it was time that we connected as a community and helped each other. So he turned the Instagram page and the Facebook page into Clay for Clay community, where we could list pictures of our work, a description, and the price. And if people were interested in buying it, then they could contact us directly to buy it. And it was all done through a hashtag called Clay for Clay community, and it's gone worldwide now. And so people from all over the planet are placing their artworks on this hashtag Clay for Clay community. There is an Instagram page for it, but it just says how to participate. So if you want to actually see it, you have to go to the hashtag. And so I took it up right away and sold 13 pieces on the very first week. But the great part of the whole experiment is that, and it is still an experiment, is that for every 5 pieces that you sold, you were to pay it forward to another artist and spend 20% of what you made off of your purchases buying an artwork or a piece from another artist. So for me, it's been a really great thing, because I've been able to now purchase 2 works from other artists who I've admired for years and could never justify buying or spending the money getting their pieces. And so this has allowed me to make some money and then directly spend it back into my own community of the clay community, getting some work from some artists who I'd really admired, and now I have one of their pieces. So I just thought it was a nice way of the paying it forward to help other artists during this time, because I think, you know, we all work in isolation pretty much anyways. And like for me, for instance, every single place where I sold work is closed right now. So my income went overnight to 0. So it was a nice way to all of a sudden get a little trickle of something coming in to help pay the bills, because so far I've got no job keeper, no grant money. So it's been really a struggle financially. So this kind of got me out there thinking, okay, I can sell pieces online. I always thought it was kind of hard to sell 3D artwork online because people want to see it. But I was quite amazed at the uptake and the response I got back from this one little Instagram page. Then the other thing was Elizabeth and Bromlin and I started a group, as Miranda and Angela would know, about makers and artists of the Huon. And we've tried to keep that online community going. And we put together on our own backs an exhibition. And unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, we had to close the exhibition right in the middle of it. It was at Home Hill Winery and a restaurant. So of course, it had to immediately shut down. But we had a huge, great response from the community with that exhibition. We had people coming in every day. We all took turns manning the exhibition. We took turns training each other in skills that others didn't have, on like buying a square and how to use the square and how to take money and how to do Instagram or Facebook, because not everybody was up to speed on that. So far, we'll see how, if we come out of the COVID thing and what we're allowed to do. You know, one of the ideas I think Angela and Miranda are well aware of, we'd like to start some sort of an art trail in the Huon Valley. And if we can't do it by people moving around, then maybe virtually, like we're still trying to do on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So yeah, no. But that sounds really interesting with the Clay for Clay community. And also, I guess, you know, what you're talking about with the artists connecting the way you have with your group is really encouraging to see people come together. I guess the question that I have on that is, what would be a way you think of engaging with the community on a whole in that space?
Well, one of the things I just recently found out is that the girl who's been running the Signet Handmade Trail is now moving to Melbourne, and so that's kind of dead in the water. So there's an opportunity to open up an art trail to the whole Huon Valley and not just a little segment of the Huon Valley. So it would be nice, where the vacancy of that space is to open that up to all artists in the Huon Valley when we're able to move around again. And try and make a month-long open studio event, possibly, for everybody.
So you were aware that sorry, there's a massive eagle flying by. You were aware that there was a lady, Fern Feller, who started looking at that, at setting up a trail using existing restaurants and existing studios to create a trail that way. I guess what she came up against was people not being so keen to participate. Insurance was an issue. Restaurants were worried about particularly bigger artworks falling, or if there were 3D artworks in courtyards or gardens, that it might be vandalized or stolen. But she is still keen to work on this. So this might still be something where people can get together. She's made a lot of connections with local businesses, but I guess due to COVID as well, this is now a little bit dead in the water at this point. But a virtual way might be a more an interim way to go.
I think that's an interesting one, that if you've been to any of them, Feral Arts, who are a national organisation, have what they call little lunches. So midday every day, you can join on one of the Feral Arts little lunches. They're based up in Queensland. And they're half an hour. They just bring artists together every day, have a different performer or somebody, and it's basically for them a way of paying artists to do something in that half an hour. But what was interesting, I mean, and they have lots of people, screens and screens full of Zoom. So I think the one I was at were 80 people there. And what was interesting was one of the people just said, I've never felt so connected nationally. This new Zooming around, I'm actually feeling very connected. It was one of the things we noticed when we first came to Tassie, particularly with the artists who work with kids, how unconnected they were. They were very isolated. We all tend to work, especially in regional areas, in a very isolated way. And maybe that is one of the very good positives that has come out of this, is that we will feel more able, perhaps, Lisa, to use the Instagrams and to use that stuff to stay connected, and maintain that even once we can all gather again, if and when we can do that. But so that's something, certainly, it's something, again, that Regional Arts Australia, we're looking at working with NBN much more to try and, so moving out of the arts, moving with technology people, because that's something we all need desperately as artists areas, particularly if you're in a remote area in Northern Territory. We're looking at satellite phones and things for people because they're just not connected otherwise. So I don't think we need satellite phones in the Huon quite yet. With some better NBN maybe, but I think that's an interesting. It's a really great example, Lisa. I love that. It's really great. But if that can carry on after that, it'd be a great positive thing to come out of it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and then I've also just gotten into a program called Seed Lab, which is for my agricultural business. But we're having twice weekly Zoom meetings with the group. It was supposed to be workshops, but of course that all quickly changed. And so now we're having weekly or bi-weekly Zoom meetings, and it's really nice way to stay connected with the community all over the state. The meetings run from 2 to 3 hours. We take a coffee break in the middle of it. But it's just really interesting to see how people's lives have been changed by all this and the way that we're pivoting our businesses and just getting that support and help from others in the wider community.
Would you think of applying for grant funding to support the what's it called, Clay for Clay community or human beings, that kind of work to make that happen, so people are being paid to do this?
Yeah. I did apply for quite a few grants last year for the artists and the makers of the Huon and got 0, so I'm a bit granted out with no results at the moment.
Out of interest, who did you apply to for that? Did you apply to the Australia Council or not?
No, we were advised to apply to our local Bendigo bank.
So private funds, basically. The Australia Council currently have rounds open, which are around adapting practice, and individuals can apply for up to $10,000 for adapting practice, for organisations 20. There was another grant round open which would have suited. That was the Maya one. Did anybody go for the Maya grants? They were just open for 4 days. It was 1,000 grants of $1,000.
Yeah, Bromlin applied for it. I looked at it, but because I run a dual business and they said they wanted to look at your LinkedIn and your web page and your social media, I didn't feel like I had a strong enough art presence on all of those things because I share that with my agricultural business. But Bromlin did apply, and it looked like it was a good opportunity if you had a strong art presence in any of those mediums.
That's a good point, that people might not have good self-marketing or be having that as a priority with all these different media platforms. It's a bit overwhelming. So Miranda, I wouldn't have heard about your heartfelt thing if it weren't for our meeting that I just happened to be invited to because somebody dropped out or something. yeah, but there are just so many mediums, and yeah, I don't really want to prioritize putting myself out there as a product, but I guess the reality is, I don't know. I hope it's not that I have to do that to get work. I don't know. Is it? Do I have to do that? I don't have a social media platform so much, just my own thing for my family. But yeah, I do a lot of work. So yeah, does anyone have any opinions on how to get around the whole grant thing when you do work, and some of it's good, but you don't really do Instagram or any of those things to be a self-promotion person?
Well, I'll just say from my own experience, I'm finding that even though it's uncomfortable to have the social media and the self-promotion and the marketing, is that I'm finding you don't get much in the way of support if you don't have a place where people can come and see you and visit you. I know, like this other program I'm in right now, because of we're all pivoting our businesses, they're having us do practice videos, like we were talking to a journalist that they may show one day. And so just talking about how every single business in this program has, whether before or after, has had to go online with social media, Facebook, and they've set up courses with us with Digital Ready. So whether you like it or not, I think in this COVID time, it's the only way you're going to relate to your community. I don't know how else you can, if you can't get out to see your community, I don't know how else you're going to do it. And it's up to you to share what you want to share. But I don't know how else you can engage with your community if you're not doing it online.
True.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to go. Thank you very much, Simon. And thank you, Miranda, for inviting me. And it was lovely to hear everybody's thoughts.
I want to see another painting like that last one you.
Oh, wow, yeah. I've been thinking about that lately.
One.
I'll do a COVID painting, Jackson Pollock splashes.
Look at the Atelier. Have a look at the Atelier program. It might be something, you know, there's no obligation. You can just come along to one or two, just meet some like-minded people. There are other therapists around. We'll do one session around that at some point. So have a look.
That'd be lovely. Okay. Yeah. I think my phone's about to drop out.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Sherry.
I've got to rush off to another meeting as well. So while Sherry's leaving, I'm going to leave as well. Thank you, Simon, and thank you, everybody. Really great to hear the conversation.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Ange. Okay, I suppose, Julie, have you got anything from a health and well-being perspective? You need to go off mute.
Yeah, thanks, Miranda. I guess it is how we engage the community and how we do reach out to the vulnerable people in our community. You know, it is all about social media at the moment and how we need to engage with community. I also heard on the radio how, you know, there's so many vulnerable people out there that don't have the internet connection and don't have that capability of connecting, and that's really, you know, such a concern in this current environment with COVID-19. Yeah, your stories are amazing that you've shared today, and really inspiring, and it's a lot of, it's food for thought, and how we do sort of expand, you know, our heartfelt projects, you know, how we can get out there to those people that don't particularly use social media. So it's a difficult task.
It is, and I mean, you know, Robin, I totally with you. I hate social media stuff, really. I suppose it is about whether you need to or not, isn't it? Ultimately, it's about whether we are all about, as growth, as artists, growth, expansion, competition, etc., or whether we can work more cooperatively together. It sounds like dreamland. I know. I'm just, but one of the things I've, all of us, I think, as artists, the worst. I just hate that competitive vibe the whole time of looking at somebody else. It's the worst thing about Instagram. It's all about us showing off ourselves, isn't it? When did that happen? When did that start?
There are beautiful projects. I think I said to Miranda, there was an online exhibition/gig. It was going to be live, but now it's online. And it is beautiful and the people are beautiful. I just had a problem with the people's choice in this situation, because it ends up being, vote for me, vote for me. And if people really push it, then it's a bit like the American campaigns for presidency. It's more the people who try and have big social networks online that will be valued over what the content is. So to get around that is tricky in this new online, instead of being there and meeting people and talking about the art together. Yeah.
It's absolutely Trump, isn't it, who said he didn't want to get rid of the task force because they were very popular. Like, they're getting hit on their Facebook page, the COVID. It's the way of seeing the world around popularity rather than around, it's the values have changed, I suppose. That's what it is.
So, to reach people who don't use the internet, that is a tricky one. I mean, posters in the old days, but I'm not quite sure when we can't just meet and chat, bump into people. That is a challenge.
Yeah, especially when you can't go out either. So you can put up all the posters you like, but people are, probably not really stopping and looking at the moment. So
Supermarket is the only place we all go. Oh, actually, no. Some people would get deliveries, wouldn't they? Not sure.
And Carmen, sorry, Carmen, I don't have a visual for you, but do you have anything you would like to say? Okay, maybe not.
She's muted.
And Carmen, if you can hear me, you're muted. Okay, maybe not. I guess we're getting close to the end. Does anyone have any further questions for Simon? Or Simon, do you have any further questions for people?
I would just say that I found this whole thing fantastic. It's really opened my eyes to a lot of things. Thanks to everyone and Simon. Yeah, great.
That makes me feel so good. It's so great just to, somebody who, I don't know, just to connect with one person like that. It's really, really nice. There's a whole world out there of professional creative arts. That's what I suppose my message is, and it's something we can really work on as individuals more. Thank you.
So thanks again, Simon. It's always inspiring to hear you. So,
well, with some of you at the next Atelier sessions.
Sorry?
I may see some of you at the next Atelier sessions.
Yes, so the next Atelier, for those who don't know, it was planned for the Huon Valley. It's going to be via Zoom again now, so it's still on the 9th of June, but it's not a full day. But I'll be sending out an email to the Artists and Makers group. And I don't know, Simon, if you have any advertising, we can share that online as well.
Yeah, well, it's on our website, and I was going to actually say there is actually one before that, and there's one next week on Monday, which is the one about art and mourning. So.
Yeah. So would you like me to share that with my group?
Yeah, we're sending that out today, the publicity for that. So
awesome. Okay.
It'll all be on the website, and you go in there and book on there. Doesn't cost anything. But if you're a member of Atelier, Robin, you've signed up.
Yep.
And Miranda, you've signed up.
Yep.
So if you attend those and you're not working for a council or something like that, you can get a $125 stipend for contributing.
So Simon, how do you sign up to be part of LTR? Is it on
You go to ateliertasmania.org, ateliertasmania.org, and there is a get involved button. You just click on there, and there's a bit of info to fill in about yourself, who you work with, just so we know you work with intergenerational groups in some creative community way, and then you're in. You know, we're just constantly trying to get funding. We've just put up, we get funding from Australia Council and Arts Tasmania, so we've got enough money to do a few more months before we then reapply and get funding for the next year, hopefully.
So I can send that information out to the group as well, so that you just have the website and the details how to register for this. So I'll do that as well. And I think Robin,
I've sent it out on the
Tony, sorry?
It's on the chat, the address.
Ah, yeah, okay. But I'll send it out to the larger group as well, if that's okay. So just so that people know about it. Robin, Tony Kazda, Robin. So if you wanted to email me about the grant for your project, please get in touch. If you wanted to apply for these community grants.
You're talking to me about the CAS. I think
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's your email then?
I'll just type it here. You'll be having help.
Closing date for those grants.
I'll find out because I haven't seen the final version. So if it went live this morning, then I'll be able to send it out to the whole group anyway. Okay, so there's my email address. I've just typed it in. So any of the artists and makers emails that you get come from me.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Robin, upside down, I think. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, there she is.
Sorry, I'm doing a time lapse thing.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to, yeah. When the sun comes out.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks for
everybody.
inviting me again. Lovely to meet you all, and I look forward to coming down and seeing you all at some point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And,
Bye.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.